Silver light plays on the lake's surface. My thoughts dip and trail their fingers in the currents beneath. I shift on my faded chair on the dock. Broken bits from the white cumulus clouds change shape and melt on their blue canvas. A woodpecker drills intermittently, and a crane waits in the marshes with enviable stillness. I think of Adam back at home, wondering the same things that I'm asking of myself. What am I doing here? Will I go back to Adam? Nothing had been the same since Maud. She had caused me to question everything, especially myself. Maud first appeared last spring. I was on my knees in the backyard putting in bedding plants when I saw her pulling a branch of lilacs down toward her face. Eyes closed, she was breathing in their fragrance. She wore a brown flowered midi-length house dress, and Oxford walking shoes. Her gray crimped hair was mostly hidden under a cloche hat. I was puzzled by her old-fashioned attire and the sense of déjà vu that enveloped me. Her clothing was reminiscent of the things I had seen my grandmother wear when I was a child. But my grandmother had never worn her outfits with the sense of elegance and gentility that this stranger exhibited with her white gloves and perfect posture. As I tried to identify the vaguely familiar face, a photograph came to memory. The face I saw had the same rimless glasses and kindly, intelligent expression as Ellen Montgomery had in the photograph on the dust jacket of her books. I felt dizzy. There was more than a similarity. This was Lucy Maud Montgomery, late celebrated author of Anne of Green Gables, Emily of New Moon, and a score of others. Ellen Montgomery, who died in 1942, long before I was born. I remained on my knees, gawping, unsure what the appropriate etiquette was in such a situation. She glanced at me and smiled. Don't you just love the smell of lilacs? They're so full of promise of the delights to come. Would you like some? It seemed the polite thing to do, to offer. Oh, could I? It's been so many years since I had flowers. I went into the porch for gardening shears, hoping she would be gone when I came back. A pre-migraine hallucination, it had to be. It probably wasn't a good idea for the minister's wife to be having visions. St. Paul, maybe, or the angel Gabriel, but I was pretty sure Ellen Montgomery was not on the approved list. She was still there when I returned, studying the garden. Your roses would benefit from some good manure, she said. So few people know how to tend roses properly. Your pansies are nice, though. I'm just a beginner. I snipped off a few stems of white lilacs for her. She smiled as she accepted them. Thank you. That's so kind of you. Do you think perhaps we should take them inside and put them in water? I was uneasy about the idea of having her in the house, but couldn't think of a polite way to refuse. I led the way through the porch, removing my gardening shoes before entering the kitchen. She followed serenely, holding her bouquet as though she were the queen on a state visit. Would you like something to drink? Are ghosts able to drink, I wondered? A cup of tea would be lovely. More likely she was an hallucination. They could do whatever they wanted. I put the kettle on and began to arrange the lilacs in a vase while we waited for the water to boil. When it was ready, I warmed the teapot, aware that she was watching. I retrieved 2 of my grandmother's china cups and saucers from the top cupboard. Maud would expect a teacup. Despite my sense of panic, I did myself proud. Linen napkins from a drawer, a gift from a church member who had visited Ireland, cake I had made that morning. She sipped her tea with enjoyment. That's delicious. There's nothing like a good cup of tea. Are you here for any special reason? I asked. I mean, it's not just for flowers and a cup of tea, is it? Well, that's what I call getting straight to the point. No, that's all right. I like people who are direct and honest. Much better than being sly. I think you and I are kindred spirits. You mean because we're both ministers' wives? No one understands the lot of a minister's wife better than another minister's wife. It can be a terribly lonely life. I so wished in my day that I had someone to talk to who understood. It would have made my life more bearable. My closest friend was my journal. It was the only place I could speak frankly, saying all the things I didn't dare say out loud, in case one of my husband's parishioners was to overhear. That was a troublingly familiar sentiment. Her eyes traveled around my kitchen, taking in details with interest. Pardon my curiosity. I feel a teensy bit like Alice in Wonderland. What is that black box? I turned to see what she was looking at. It's called a microwave. It's an oven that cooks food very quickly. Seeing her intrigued expression, I thought I should demonstrate it to her. I took a bag of microwave popcorn from the cupboard. She watched intently as I pushed the controls with my finger, eliciting beeps from the machine. She stooped, wide-eyed, to watch the rotating tray and the expanding bag with its small firecracker noises. When I took the bag out and opened it to reveal the popped corn, she looked as delighted as a child on Christmas morning. How amazing! Do you cook all your food in bags? No, but you can get a lot of things like that. I showed her the other appliances. I felt like a tour guide, enjoying impressing her as though I was personally responsible for the advances in technology. My kitchen was well appointed by 1991 standards. My husband Adam loved gadgets. Maud was amazed by everything, but was especially taken with the food processor. I wish I had had this during canning season. I usually enjoyed cooking, but after putting up jams and pickles and relishes, I could have slept for a month. The dishwasher is my favorite, I said, but then I don't can that much. Housework must be a pleasure with all these gadgets, Maud remarked. You'd think so, I replied. She peered at me sympathetically through her round, frameless glasses. What you are experiencing is the dark night of the soul. You and my husband struggled with it for years. In those days, of course, it was a terrible secret. The disgrace would have ended his career had anyone learned of it. I had to work terribly hard to hide it from people. I would smile cheerfully and tell everyone that Ewan was busy working on his sermons. Then I would go home and see him, white and shaken, terrified that he was lost, that he had committed the unpardonable sin. I was at my wit's end. How did you manage? I asked. My work was my salvation. I got up early every morning before light and worked on my stories. I could escape the demands of my life for those few hours before it all began again. Without that, I think I would have gone mad. This is excellent pound cake. Not quite as rich as I used to make it, but quite nice. Are you saying I need a place of escape? I said, sliding the cake plate toward her. She shook her head slightly in refusal and dabbed at her mouth with a napkin. My dear, I don't presume to know what another person needs. I took refuge in doing my duty. It's remarkable how stable that will keep one through life's crises. And when my duties became too much, I turned to my imagination. I stood and went to the window to look out to where the Brownlee son, home from kindergarten, was riding his tricycle down the sidewalk. I hate this mask I have to wear, I said. She looked up in surprise. My dear, we all have our masks, every single being on this planet. And a good thing it is, too. Our masks are what make survival possible. Even with our most intimate friends, there is always some element of pretense, some secrets we don't tell. I rubbed with my finger at a speck on the window. When I was in my teens, it was the fashion to want to strip away all pretenses. They were seen as hypocrisy. Maud tilted her head to one side and smiled at me. The very young and the very beautiful may look agreeable naked, but most of us are improved with some covering. I'm not sure I would want to live in a world where I was forced to see into the ugliest recesses of another's minds, or where they could see into mine. A little hypocrisy can be a very useful thing.